Alright, so welcome to my hands-on review of the Omega Seamaster 300 in blue. This is the Omega Seamaster 300 Heritage that was released back in 2021 and something that I was really excited to add to my collection. Before we get started with the video, just for a quick wrist check, I am wearing my JLC Navy SEALs diver, which is one of my favorite dive watches, but this Omega Seamaster 300 Heritage in blue is definitely going to give it a little bit of a run for its money. So in this video, we're going to go over a few of the watch details, talk a little bit about the hands-on wearing experience, in addition share my thoughts on why I thought this would be a great diver to add to my collection. So the original Seamaster was released back in 1957 and was officially Omega's first dive watch. There's been a bazillion iterations of this watch. Omega has really been on the innovative side of the watch industry, where if you think of Rolex as being steady and consistent, updating very small features, Omega definitely lives on the edge and is always pushing the boundary of creativity, as we can see here with this Omega Seamaster 300. So from a case perspective, let's dive into the watch details. I find these dimensions to be exceptional. So the case is 41 millimeters in diameter, 13.5 millimeter thick, which is a little bit deceiving, as without the dome sapphire crystal, this comes in at about 12.5 millimeters thick, so just slightly thicker than the Dockstar reviewed last week. But when you see the details of the movement, this extra millimeter of thickness is something that I am okay to live with. Omega opted for something that's a little bit frustrating and went with 21 millimeter lugs. I say this is a little bit frustrating because I do have quite a few Omega straps, and historically I feel like they've been 20 millimeters, maybe 22, so for Omega to kind of do a 21 millimeter lug strap option was a little bit off-putting, especially now that you can easily access all of their NATO strap options. I feel like this was a little bit of a ploy to continue to sell additional NATO straps. I have picked up a couple different NATO strap options from Bark and Jack, another really great YouTuber that puts out great content that happens to also sell straps. 48.5 millimeter lug to lug width, which means that this watch can accommodate a variety of different wrist sizes. At 48.5 millimeters, I can say you can go down as small as 6.25 inches. My wrist is just a bit under 7.5 inches, as you can get a really good sense of how this will wear on your wrist. Overall, the case finishing on the Omega Seamaster 300 is just simply amazing. What you have is a combination of satin brush finishing with a lot of polished flanks, giving the watch a little bit of a blingy aesthetic at times, but far less blingy than the previous Seamaster 300 line. Continuing on with the external of the watch, looking at the case, I do really like the crown that Omega decided to go with on the Seamaster 300. It is a larger style crown with no crown guards and has a little bit of an onion shape, which allows for the watch to have really deep knurlings that makes it really easy to unwind and set the time on a dime. Flipping the watch over, we get a beautiful shot of the movement through the sapphire caseback. The sapphire caseback does have a cool locking mechanism that's keeping everything safe. This watch is capable of withstanding 15,000 Gauss, which is comparative to what you would find in a low grade MRI. A fridge magnet is about 30 to 50 Gauss. So with that said, this watch is able to withstand quite a bit of magnetic fields. So this is Omega's self-winding in-house movement. I actually think Omega does a great job finishing their movements. You know, nothing hand finished, but this is just really exceptional detail. I love the beautifully finished Geneva striping on the movement and the beautiful display of the jewels. And then you get to see prominently feature a free sprung balance wheel with a silicone balance spring. This is a top of the line movement, and in my perspective is really pushing the envelope far past anything that Rolex has designed in the years. You know, just in my humble opinion, I think I've always appreciated Omega vision and willingness to continue to innovate and push the boundaries for the luxury watch segment and keeping their prices relatively reasonable. Last but not least, this particular watch features a 60-hour power reserve, which is in line and I would say pretty adequate for watches in this price point. This watch is all about the dial. The dial is killer and I believe is better than before. On the previous version of the Seamaster 300 Heritage models, the dial had lume paint that made it look like it was a recessed dial or a sandwich dial. However, Omega, I'm assuming, listened to the small sect of watch collector fans that really love sandwich dials and presented us with a beautifully executed blue sandwich dial. If you're not familiar with sandwich dials, you can check out my video on the Oak and Oscar Burnham, but the long and short of it, the lumen is applied to a disc underneath the stencil cutout dial, which gives you just really bright lume through the recess, and it adds a different type of dimension to the dial. We're used to seeing applied numerals. This gives the dial a little bit more of a three-dimensional appearance. So on this, you have the sandwich dial cutout of both the numerals and the triangular indices, and in between the triangular indices, you have just white minute markers. At 12 o'clock, you have the Omega logo, and right above 6, you see the Seamaster 300. That is all the font that's on the dial, giving this a very clean vintage aesthetic. You also have the use of what Omega calls vintage Super-LumiNova underneath, or what we would call Fotina in the collector community, and I think it just looks tremendous with this dial. I was really excited to add a sandwich dial that was not a Panerai. For me, Panerais, and I'm doing a video on this later, Panerai is just a little bit too large, and this allows for a sandwich dial to be worn on a beautiful diver, which I can't think of very many divers that are taking advantage of this style of lume. The dial also features a true lollipop second hand. This was a little bit controversial when Omega used this on the limited edition Seamaster 300 from the Bond movie. However, I really do enjoy just the true lollipop second hand. It gives the watch a different aesthetic from anything else that I have in my collection. I also love that Omega chose to go with the broadsword style hand. I love these hands. They really pop off the dial and give the watch some really great presence. So one of the changes from this year's version is that the dial is definitely larger, and Omega did this by reducing the size of the bezel. So I think you get a more open dial with just a little bit more real estate that make the sandwich dial appearance really just stands out and creates a unique spot in the diver market. Last but not least, you get to stare at all of this magic underneath a well executed domed sapphire crystal. As for the bezel, there's not a lot to write home about on the bezel. However, it is a very beautiful, very well executed bezel. Omega state that the bezel is aluminum oxide, supposedly more strong, but time would tell. This is definitely thinner, as I mentioned above, and the bezel numerals, markers, and pips are all lumed, giving you an amazing lume shot. So the bracelet does feature a button for easy, quick adjustments on the fly. You maybe get another 1/4 of an inch of breathability on a hot day. The clasp has not changed from most Omega bracelets. You get the laser engraved logo, and the clasp is very substantial, creating a sense of security on the wrist. The bracelet is really stunning. I love that they reversed the polishing and brush flanks from the previous model, and it makes it look a lot less blingy. And so instead of having the center links polished, this time the center links are brushed with the outer flanks being polished, and it just creates a really, really great looking bracelet. Omega went for screws for easy sizing as well. So if you have a small screwdriver, one that you would maybe use to repair sunglasses, you can easily change the bracelet to accommodate your wrist size. I do believe that Omega designed this watch for collectors, even with how easy the bracelet comes off, considering that it uses standard pins. Makes me think that Omega really designed this to change strap often, which would make sense to support their other marketing around their NATO strap business. I can't tell you how much I love wearing this watch. It wears so comfortably on the wrist. It's definitely thinner than the previous version and substantially thinner than the Omega Planet Ocean. So if you're looking for an Omega diver but have traditionally stayed away because of their case thickness, I would definitely encourage you to go try on the newer Omega Seamaster 300. This was released towards the end of last year and was relatively hard to get in the beginning, and it seems like availability is starting to pick up. This watch sits comfortably both on the bracelet and on a NATO strap. I have been alternating back and forth. I am usually not a bracelet lover, but I really do enjoy this bracelet. I would say that this wears different than my Submariner Kermit, which I'd also really enjoy and is a pretty important part of my collection. However, I find myself wearing the Omega Seamaster quite a bit more just because of the versatility of the watch, and it's a little bit less known. So who is this watch for? If you're looking for a larger style watch and has smaller wrists, around 6 1/4, this is also something that you should definitely entertain. It does have substantial wrist presence without looking silly with a lot of overhang. I think this can accommodate and look really good on a 6 1/4 inch wrist. I actually think it was designed perfectly for my wrist size at 7 1/4. That's just my personal opinion. Obviously, I added it to my collection because I really enjoy the initial wearing experience. So this fills a very particular spot in my collection. I did not own a blue diver, and I think a blue diver is essential. I had entertained the Tudor Black Bay 58 in blue. However, every time I look at the watch, I like it, but I don't love it, and I really do not like the riveted style bracelet. I was looking for something that would pair well with the Submariner that I already had, with the Kermit that I had in my collection, to the green bezel, and then I have my JLC Navy SEALs diver that fits a totally different niche, that's more of a military style diving watch. However, already have like the black ceramic bezel with white contrast and font. So it really didn't make sense for me to add just a standard sub. So with that, thank you all for tuning in to my thoughts on the Omega Seamaster 300. This is a really incredible watch that I have thoroughly enjoyed having the privilege to own. As always, thank you for watching. Please continue. Check back and subscribe to the channel. You can also follow me on my Instagram page, JWO Studio, where I post all my watch related content and my wrist shots of the day. So as always, thank you for watching. I will see you all soon.